President, இது வீடியோ ஆன் பண்ணிருங்க President.
Hi.
Hi sir. How are you sir?
Hello sir.
I'm fine, thank you. Hi.
Nice, sir. On behalf of Midwest, we welcome you for this regular monthly meeting, clinical meeting, and we are very happy that today you are with us, sir.
I'm very happy to join, but unfortunately there won't be any fellowship meeting after this.
Sir, for the past 3 months we are having this meeting, clinical meeting, without fellowship. I think it's a record break. Vishnu.
Yes, sir.
Hi Vishnu.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, இப்போ நம்ம ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிக்கலாம் Vishnu.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, sir. Sir, good evening, everybody. Good evening to everybody. We are having 3 presentations from Midwest members today. The first one will be from SKS Hospital Dean Postgraduate, Dr. Harun Siria. He will talk on increasing incidence of spinal injuries during this lockdown period. Our experience, sir. So over to Dr. Harun. He'll be talking on increasing incidence of spine fractures during lockdown.
Yeah, please proceed.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Today I'm talking about increased incidence of spine fractures during the lockdown period. Increased incidence of the spine fractures during the lockdown period. So during these lockdown periods, one of the common injury found these days were the fall from height injuries. So the cause of or mechanism may be different for the different patients. Maybe due to non-availability of the alcohol, the people may be climbing for toddy, or they may be getting bored and doing unfamiliar works. All these were the different circumstances we noted from the histories. So the fall from height injuries can be a flexion injuries or a vertical compression injuries. So flexion injuries means it can be the flexion forces can result in a sprain of ligaments of the back or neck, and which can also cause the compression fractures, dislocation of the spines. And also vertical compression injuries occurs when it is a fall from height occurs on an erect positions. So it can cause burst fractures or compression fractures. So here we'll discuss a few cases we have come across during the last 1.5 months. So first is a case of a 42-year-old male patient. He has a history of fall from height at the home. He presented with the pain over the cervical region and the weakness of the upper limbs. So initially the X-ray was been taken. The X-ray was showing a C6, C7 involvement was there. Followed by MRI scan was also taken. So there was a injury involved in this space, and also a cord injury was also noted. CT scan also proved the same conclusion. So that he was diagnosed to have an extension distraction injury of the C6, C7 with the Asia D neurology, and he was planned to manage by fracture reduction and ACDF with plating. So initially, intraoperatively, the patient the reduction was done. The first image is the pre-op image, and the second is the intra-op image. So the reduction was done with a hook, and the post-op image showing after the post-op after the ACDF. So second case is a case of a 50-year-old male patient. He also has a history of fall from height. So he presented with a severe back pain and also a shoulder pain. And also he was not able to move both lower limbs. So initially the X-ray was taken, the shoulder was seen to be dislocated and was reduced from the casualty itself. And followed by for further initial investigation showed a D11 fracture and also a cord injury was also noted. So followed by it was fixed for 2 levels higher, 2 levels higher level and 2 levels lower level, which was fixed. So third is a case of a 21-year-old male patient. He has a history of electrocution and a fall from height. He presented with a pain over the cervical region with a Asia A neurology. There was a complete loss of sensation below T10 level. So initially the investigations were taken. The CT, we can see a clear fracture there. C5, C6 dislocation was there. CT, so the CT cuts of the image of the patient. So he was also planned for the C5, C6 and C6, C7 ACDF when fusion has been done. So these are the intra-op images of that patient and the post-op images of the patient. The fourth case is a 16-year-old male patient. He also has similar history, a fall from height at home, presented with a mid-back pain, but the neurology was normal. So the investigation, following that, the investigations, the scan showed a involvement of the fracture where the posterior elements are also involved. So same protocol was used and the fracture was fixed. So the fifth case, it was a case of a 27-year-old male patient. He has a self-fall from the tree, accidental fall from the tree, presented with unable to move both lower limbs with lower spine pain. And on a X-ray was showing a T12 flexion distraction injury and an L4 unstable burst fracture. So we can first the initial X-ray of the patient, and we have taken the CT. We can clearly shown a T12 fracture is there, and also an L4 fracture where the posterior element is also involved. So T11 to L5 was in stabilization was being done, and T12 laminectomy has also been done for the patient. And the next sixth case, it is a 17-year-old male patient. He also has a history of fall from tree. He presented with a pain over the lower back and a numbness over the lower limbs with a normal neurology. So initially X-ray was been taken. There's a fracture we can see in the X-ray. And the CT was been taken, has been shows the burst component fracture and also so CT cuts of the patient. The burst fracture it was. So the pedicles were intact, so the fracture vertebra was also involved, and the one level above and below the fixation has been done. So the conclusion from all these cases were the fall from height can cause severe spinal column injuries that can even lead to neurological deficits in the patients. So the conclusion is to teach the advanced safe methods for the climbing heights should be made popularized among the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Harun, for sharing your this presentation. So members, if they have any discussion, any doubts, they can unmute themselves and they can ask the questions.
President, your comments, President. Hello.
Hi.
President.
I'm really amazed to see the spine surgery because I don't do spine surgery, but it's all very well done. And congratulations, Harun.
President, Dr. Vishnu is a spine surgeon or orthopedician trained in spine and Ganga fellowship, and he is doing spine in SKS Hospital. His assistant is Harun, who is a postgraduate student, and he's Dr. Vishnu does a lot of scoliosis correction also here in Salem.
Excellent. That shows the results are really impressive fixation. So congratulations to Vishnu. Good.
Thank you, sir. Actually, we see that there is a lot of opposition from the public to opening of TASMAC shop. But we are seeing so many patients who are trying to climb palm tree and coconut tree to get body and falling down. And we are seeing a lot of young patients becoming paraplegic and quadriplegic. So seeing this, I think opening the TASMAC is a better option than allowing the people to climb body, this palm tree and coconut tree to get body. So.
Yeah, correct. You are very well said.
I think this point you should have noted to a Supreme Court.
Body is a tradition, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think since it is legalized in Kerala, they are having much better climbing practice. But in Tamil Nadu, since it is illegal, they don't have any climbing equipments to climb the tree safely and get that audience.
They have machines to climb actually.
Yes, sir.
The palm tree and the coconut tree. Sir, TMS sir, welcome to our meeting. Sir, what was the incidence in your hospital? Because even we had almost 6 surgeries we did for unstable bus fractures from Carda equina, like L2 level from until D12. We had some similar cases, but we didn't operate any cervical spine cases. So we saw more of dorsolateral junction injuries during this lockdown. What about your experience? How are the cases there in Coimbatore also? You had similar cases?
Yes, not falls, but road accidents we get quite frequently. Even during COVID days also we were getting cases because many peripheral units, hospitals, they were not doing. So almost from Monday, I'm sure we are going to be regular again. Yeah.
So, like, what is the protocol you are following in operating these kind of COVID patients?
Yeah, we do.
COVID positive. Yeah.
We have COVID test available in the hospital. We admit to
இல்லம்மா நான் வந்து ஆஃப்டர்நூன் வரைக்கும் தான் பிராக்டிஸ் பண்றேன்.
test and do the surgery for elective. In case of emergency, we just do it. Irrespective of whether it's positive or negative, we just do it.
Thank you, sir.
What do you do if it turns out to be positive?
If it turns out to be positive, that particular ward has to be got.
So அதனால நாளைக்கு
Can you use your audio, please?
phone பண்ணிட்டு
Prem, Sunday la practice பண்ணாதப்பா.
Sir, so TMS sir,
Yes.
are you so the positive negative your lab can itself decide and give the result immediately or do
Yeah.
they delay?
At the same day they give the results.
Same day the results. Okay.
For example, knee replacements, we admit patients 7 o'clock, do the COVID test. By 3 o'clock, we got the results. Next day, we do the knee replacement.
Okay. Did any of these patients turn to be positive in this
No.
COVID time?
Today, we announced 156 cases have been done, COVID tests. All are negative.
So interesting.
Past 4 days.
So you started doing elective cases, sir?
Yeah, we have started, yes.
Still you use PPE. It can be a false negative.
Yeah, I know, but we don't use PPE. We use N95 mask, proper sealing, and regular monkey cap and the protection for the HIV. That's all. PPE, we tried one case. It's extremely very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
So one suggestion, you can use the helmet with the hood system. You will feel a lot more comfortable.
They advise not to use helmets because it sucks air from the.
Don't put the fan on.
Okay.
Don't put the fan on, just the hood. It is much better than a PPE hood.
Right. Okay.
Vishnu, you have
Yes, sir.
a title of the increasing incidence.
Yes, sir.
This is your regular workload, no?
Sir, might be.
Increase very high because of the calls.
Yes, sir, definitely, sir. Usually we get some history of fall from height, paraplegic cervical spine injury. We get might be 2 or 3 cases in a month, sir.
Okay.
But I think I operated around 8 cases of spine fractures in the last 1.5 months. Definitely, there is an increasing incidence, and most of them are young chaps trying to climb the palm tree or coconut tree.
Yes, sir. 70% of our cases were from the palm tree, fall from the palm tree.
Palm trees.
Only 30% from the building top.
That is because of inexperienced climbers.
Yes, sir. Yes, definitely, sir.
Probably.
Sir, lot of people, they are coming home for the lockdown and they are indulging in this farming activities, and they try climbing the trees and they fall down.
That is why I recommend opening the liquor shops. completely.
Yes, sir. Actually, there is a question in the chat section of the Vignesh has asked. So when you are doing a long segment fixation, what is the role of transverse connectors? Sir, definitely when we are doing a very long segment spanning around 10 segments, transverse connectors will add stability to the fixation. But in this case, we thought that the
Meeting நடக்குது.
transverse connectors was not used because we have applied bone drafts both anteriorly and the fracture spine. Transverse connectors are not available at that time. So getting the screws were itself very difficult for us. Getting a transporter from Kerala or from Chennai was very difficult. So at the end of this, almost last week, we have finished all the screws available. So the transverse connectors were not available, but definitely for long segment fixation spanning around 6 to 7 segments, transverse connectors increases the stability. Thank you, sir. If there is no, yes, sir.
What's your indication for fixation in a burst fracture, generally speaking?
So generally speaking, there are some 2-3 specific indications in burst fractures. One, if the loss of vertebral body height is more than 50%. Second, if there is a retropulsion of the segment fragment occupying more than 50% of the canal space. Third, in addition to burst component, if there is any posterior ligamentous injury or posterior facet joint injury, I fix those cases. These are the 3 indications wherein burst fracture needs to be fixed.
So if there is a PLL injury,
yes, sir.
Even if there is no retropulsion, it is better to be fixed.
Definitely, sir. Definitely, sir. If in the MRI you are seeing some signal intensity changes or edema in the posterior ligamentous complex, or in the CT scan you are seeing some fracture in the lamina involving the facet joint, even if the neurology is normal, even though canal is not compromised, you have to fix that burst fractures.
So it's a good old Dennis 3-column concept.
Yes, sir.
Fix it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So if there is no other questions, we are moving on to the second presentation by Dr. Nitin Goyal, spine fellow. He'll be talking on Anderson's lesion in ankylosing spondylitis. Over to you, Dr. Nitin.
Hello, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Today we are going to discuss about Anderson lesion in ankylosing spondylitis. As Anderson lesion is quite common but frequently ignored, so it leads to more complications and more morbidity to the patient. Anderson lesion is a pseudoarthrosis of the spine, same as non-union of the long bones.
Full screen.
So before coming to the topic, we are having 2 cases with different mode of mechanism and different management. So here is the first case, patient with history of high halo velocity trauma with anterior translation injury of D7 or D8 with ASIA-A neurology. In second case, 78-year-old male with history of travel fall 1 month back, presented to us with not able to walk and severe back pain for past 1 week. So both patients are operated. So in first case, we have done 2 level above and 2 level below fracture stabilization. But in second case, we have done 4 level above and 3 level below pedicle screw stabilization. So our question is, why in second case we have done this much of long fixation despite there is only compression fracture seen in lateral X-ray? So we'll discuss it in the further slides. So we can see here, this is a case of ankylosing spondylitis. So here some compression fracture, but some black line is there, some fracture line is going on. So this is the Anderson lesion. So first I will come on Anderson ankylosis. So it is a seronegative spondyloarthropathies, frequently presented in male in their 2nd to 3rd decade. Hallmark of the disease is pain and stiffness of the joint primarily affect axial spine. Enthesitis is common. So in enthesopathies, there will be inflammation and erosion at the junction of the annulus and vertebral end plate that will lead to ossification of the vertebral end plate, and it will demonstrate at bridging syndesmophytes. Most common joint involved are SI joints, vertebral apophysis, and costovertebral joints. When costovertebral joints involved, there will be decreased chest expansion. So another main feature of the disease is osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is due to the uncoupling of the bone formation and resorption, decreased activity, and decreased muscle mass. Next is bamboo spine, is because of the fused apophysis joint or facet joint. When progression of that ankylosing facet joint, patient will assume a kyphotic posture to unload that facet joint and relieve the pain. So there will be kyphotic posture will be there. In ankylosing patient, spine will be rigid and it will be like a brittle beam. So there will be increased incidence of fracture with minor trauma because already spine is osteoporotic and it will like long bone brittle beam. So there will be long lever arm. So 11.4 times more incidence of the spine fracture compared to the general population in ankylosing patient. There are some examination findings like Schober test. It will demonstrate diminished sagittal mobility, decreased chest expansion, loss of horizontal gaze, chin on chest deformity, and sacroiliitis provocative test like Faber test. So our concern regarding why ankylosing patients spine fractures. So first, already we have discussed there is more osteoporosis because of unregulated osteoclast activity, uncoupling of the bone formation, bone resorption, decreased activity, decreased muscle mass, and ectopic bone formation. All will lead to osteoporosis. Second, spine is fused. So spine is fused, so it will act as a long bone. So there will be rigid lever arm. That rigid lever arm will be incapable of appropriately dissipating energy of a traumatic event. So both will alter the biomechanics, osteoporosis, less ligament constraint will lead to the fracture in ankylosing patient. Next is why fracture are missed in AS patients. Already we have discussed there will be history of minor trauma that will be missed. Patient will complain acute and chronic back pain that will attributing axial pain to normal disease activity. Then plain radiographs are less sensitive in case of fused spine. Then fracture are more common in cervicothoracic region. Those regions are poorly visualized in plain X-rays. Now, how to manage acute injury? So always treating physician should have highly suspicion of fracture in ankylosing patient. Most commonly involved area are cervical, cervicothoracic, and thoracolumbar. Injuries are extension type injury. These extension type injury will involve all three columns. So these fracture are highly unstable fracture. There is more chance of neurological injury, around 58 to 65% chance of neurological injury in ankylosing patient. It's because of the epidural bleeding and displacement of the fracture because of highly unstable fracture. Now we'll come on investigation part. X-ray, always initial investigation of the choice, but it has been replaced by CT scan as initial investigations in suspected case of trauma. Then MRI is suspected. We have to do when suspected spinal cord injury, epidural hematoma, disc injury, any vertebral translation. So we have to get an MRI. These are the example of in ankylosing patient, extension type injury, and all three columns are involved. Anterior, mid, and posterior, all three columns are involved. So how to manage? So first we have to immobilize patient in pre-injury alignment. Why we have to immobilize in pre-injury alignment? To prevent any hyperextension at fracture site, because any hyperextension will cause vertebral translation and it will further increase neurologic involvement. We have to give low weight inclined traction. If reduction will be there, we can place in halo vest. but it is more historic purpose. If not, we have to do internal fixation. So important thing in internal fixation is we have to do multiple level fixation above and below the fracture site. Why? Because bones are osteoporotic, severely, extremely unstable fracture. So for that, we have to treat this fracture as a long bone, 4 level above, 4 level below fixation. Now we are coming on the topic Anderson lesion. So described by the Anderson in 1937, is a well-known complication in ankylosed spine is a development of the localized vertebral or discovertebral lesion of the spine. Exact prevalence is not known, but it is expected around 1.5 to 28%. Various eponyms are given for the same condition like Anderson lesion, discovertebral lesion, spondylodiscitis, pseudoarthrosis, sterile discitis, and stress fracture. But to understand, Anderson lesion is the pseudoarthrosis of the spine. Various etiology are given. So first is the inflammatory etiology. Inflammatory etiology will explain multiple lesion, localized lesion in the early course of the disease when spine is not fully ankylosed and there is no history of trauma. So the inflammatory mechanism will explain this. Second is mechanical theory. According to mechanical theory, there will be trauma that will lead to fracture. So fracture can be due to the direct trauma or due to the chronic mechanical stress. So mechanical theory will explain that Anderson lesion develop in fully ankylosed spine. So in a fully ankylosed spine, a fracture or mechanical stress will lead to the more mobility and it will act as a last mobile segment. So there will be more mobility. So whatever is mechanism, either inflammatory or mechanism, they have final common pathway and it will lead to pseudoarthrosis and typical appearance of the Anderson lesion. This is the diagrammatic presentation. Here we can see the inflammatory process is going on with unfused spine. In second case, there is a trauma that leads to the fracture at disc level. Here is a fracture at vertebral level. So all these things will lead to the Anderson lesion. It may be with kyphosis or without kyphosis. There are two types of the lesion. First is the localized lesion, extensive lesion. Localized lesion will be present in the course of the disease. It will follow inflammatory mechanisms and it is subdivided based on the location. It can be either present on the discal surface of the vertebral rim and it can be present on the cartilaginous part of the vertebral end plate. Extensive lesion seen in the ankylosed spine. It will follow mainly the mechanical theory. So we are coming to radiograph. So always radiograph the initial investigation of the choice. Radiograph also provide the exact location of the pathology. So in radiograph there will be a osteolytic lesion. Osteolytic lesion surrounded by the reactive sclerosis. So here is the lesion. But radiograph also provide what is the location of the lesion. It may be transdiscal, it may be transvertebral, and it may be discovertebral. Second investigation is CT scan, which is superior to the radiograph. It also provide information regarding the posterior elements, and there will be a irregular osteolytic lesion surrounded by the reactive sclerosis. Also provide the information about the vacuum phenomena. Third is MRI. MRI is best modality. In T1 image, we'll see there is a decrease in signal intensity at the disc level and surrounder vertebral body level with increased signal intensity on contrast. And on T2 image, we will see there will be increased signal intensity. Apart from this, MRI will also provide integrity of the anterior longitudinal ligament, epidural hematoma, any translation injury, disc injury, all these things will provide by the MRI. So what is the management of Anderson lesion? There is a very little role or no role of the conservative management. Surgery indicated when there is unbearable pain, progression of the symptoms, progressive kyphosis, and neurological deficit. What is the goal of that surgery? Goal of surgery is to decompress the spine and to relieve, to provide spine stability to facilitate healing and the function of the spinal column. So what we have to do, we have to provide surgical decompression, stabilization and fusion. And also surgical procedure depend on the location of the lesion, any thecal sac compression, neurological deficit and alignment of the spine. So now we'll again come our case that 78-year-old male with history of trival fall 1 month back, treated conservatively 1 month back. Patient was treated conservative for 1 month at elsewhere, presented with us with severe back pain, not able to walk for past 1 month. On examination, there are severe tenderness present, neurological deficit was there, neurology was 3/5. Here is the X-ray of the same patient. So what we see earlier, there is a compression fracture, but now we can see some osteolytic lesion at D11 vertebra. So here is a clear cut, two things is there, history of minor trauma is there, ankylosing spine is there, and some osteolytic lesion. So we ask for CT and MRI. Here is the MRI of the patient. MRI shows, T2 image, it shows the increased signal intensity due to the inflammation. In both image we can see there is a increased signal intensity. In T1 image there is decreased signal intensity. So now it is clear. Is a patient with ankylosing spine, minor trauma is there. Patient presented with after 1 month, after 1 month of the trivial trauma, severe back pain, not able to walk. Radiograph showing osteolytic lesion at D11 vertebra with anterior translation of D10 over D11. So now it is clear, it is Anderson lesion. Here is the CT scan of the same patient showing osteolytic with reactive sclerosis with anterior translation. So what we have done, we have did surgery. So first we immobilize patient in pre-injury alignment with a kyphotic posture to prevent any hyperextension at the fracture site. There will always difficult intubation in those patients. So we have option either awake fiber optic intubation or laryngeal mask airway. Positioning. Intraoperative positioning also important here. We can either modify our table according to the patient deformity, or we can put some bolster to prevent hyperextension at the fracture site. We did 4 level above and 3 level below pedicle screw stabilization, posterior decompression, and we did from posterior, we did anterior vertebral reconstruction. We refresh the margin of the fracture and put bone graft. So here is the final post-op X-ray, 4 level above, 4 level below. In lateral X-ray, we can see that height is also, we have achieved the height of vertebra at D11 level with nice bone graft. We have one more interesting case, 69-year-old female with osteolytic lesion at D12 vertebra. Patient was treated, presented with severe back pain and not able to walk. For that vertebroplasty done. Vertebroplasty done at some other center. Patient was symptom free on next post-operative day, but she started complaint of severe back pain and not able to walk after few weeks of the initial surgery. This time patient presented to us with severe back pain and not able to walk. We asked for one X-ray and MRI. So there is some anterior translation of D11, T11 over D12, severe canal compromise. So what we have done again, we did 4 level above, 3 level below stabilization, decompression and fusion. So what was the wrong in initial surgery? So in initial surgeon, what they have missed? They have missed posterior elements. So there is instability in posterior element. Patient was ankylosing spine. So this ankylosing spine, osteolytic lesion, involvement of the posterior element. on this case, simple vertebroplasty is not indicated or contraindicated. So what we have to do? We have to do proper stabilization, decompression, and fusion. Next, patient was asymptomatic, and we mobilized patient on the second postoperative day. So, what is the take-home message of today? That fracture in ankylosing spine is highly unstable fracture. We always should have high suspicion when patient present with acute pain. Second, Anderson lesion is as a non-union of the spine. Third, we have to proper stabilization, decompression, and fusion is always mandatory. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. So the subject is open for discussions. Any doubts and comments are welcomes.
Dr. Vishnu,
Yes, sir.
what size are the screw you use in lumbar pedicle and thoracic pedicle? One.
Yes, sir.
Number two, in severe osteoporotic fractures,
Yes, sir.
do you use any augmentation technique like cementing at the screw sides or hydroxyapatite coated screws?
Yes, sir. So one, the size of the screws from T10 to sacral vertebra, I use 6.5 mm screws. From above, from T9 onwards, I use 5.5 mm screws, sir. The narrowest screw is around, T5 is the one which is the narrowest screw. So even in the adult patients, 5.5 mm screws, we can use it. One, sir. Second, in osteoporotic vertebra, definitely there is an indication for hydroxyapatite coated screws or cement augmented screws. So I don't have any experience of using hydroxyapatite coated screws, but I have used cement augmented screws. So we have an pedicle screws with lumen. Once we put the pedicle screws, we can inject cement into that screws. But in this case, where we have used, the hold was good. So we didn't think about using an cement augmented screws. Second, if this usually cement augmented screws are very costly. If normal screws cost around 2,500 rupees, the cement augmented screws cost around 6,000 to 8,000 rupees. So what in the poor patients, what we do is we initially put the screws. If the screw hold is not good, we remove the screws. We check the integrity of the screw holes. We inject normal cement into the screw hole, and then immediately put the screw again. So in that way, the hold of the screw will increase, and the cost will also, we can cut it down.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, sir?
Vishnu?
Yes, sir.
Anderson lesion, is there any, the non-union, is there any time limit from the primary injury from when you start calling Andersons or non-unions from an acute injury? Is there clinical pain, deformity? What's the clinical?
Usually, the Anderson lesion is mainly a radiological definition, sir. So whenever there is an injury, there is a fracture. Because of the trivial injury and difficulty in diagnosing it, we might miss a fracture and an ankylosing spondylitis. And this fracture over a period of time, over a period of 3 weeks or 6 weeks, it will develop into a non-union with inflammation and osteolysis over the region of fracture. And when we take an X-ray or a CT scan, when we see an osteolytic lesion with fluid-filled cavity in MRI, then we call it as an Anderson lesions.
Okay.
It's more of a radiological entity than clinical entities.
Technically, clinically you can call it a delayed.
Yes, sir. Fracture, missed fracture and ankylosing spondylitis.
And it's only in ankylosing spondylitis you use the term, or
yes, so that is exclusively used only in ankylosing spines.
Okay.
Okay. If we are seeing a pseudoarthrosis in a non-union in some other non-ankylosing, we just call it as pseudoarthrosis. We don't call it as an Anderson lesions.
The first case you showed
yes, sir.
The first case you showed us, was it an angspond or it looked like a regular fracture?
So this is the X-ray, sir. So actually, it's the whole of the thoracic spine is all fused. Lumbar spine, it's just
not this one, the another one, with the complete dislocation.
The
first X-ray.
First one, that was a normal X-ray. The normal. What was not an ankylosing spondylitis.
That's not a.
Yes, sir. I was showing that even in those unstable fracture dislocation, we were just fixing 2 level above, 2 level below. But in case of ankylosing spondylitis, we always put at least minimum of 3 levels above, 3 levels below, sir. Because the one is it's an osteoporotic bone. Second, it's such an unstable fracture that 3 and 3 above, 3 below will be the ideal fixation for those fractures.
Can we translate this into the osteoporotic fractures also?
Definitely, sir. Definitely. If the hold is not good and if we don't have cement augmented screws, then we can go for higher levels of fixation to increase the stability.
Okay. Vishnu?
Yes, sir.
All the Anderson these lesions are painful.
Definitely, sir. Definitely, sir.
All the.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most of the time it will be painful.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So there are some patients who has some these sort of pseudoarthrosis which is not that painful. They cope. Isn't it? That's okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, if the patient is not having ankylosing spondylitis, if there is an osteoporotic fracture, it has been treated conservatively. They know the patient is having pseudoarthrosis. Those patients might be asymptomatic, sir. But usually in case of ankylosing spondylitis, Anderson lesion, most of the time they will present with pains.
Okay, which means there are small percentage of people with ankylosing spondylitis with pseudoarthrosis, which may not be painful, but they will have an instability posterior.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All these people have a posterior instability also, posterior element.
Yes, yes, sir. So usually ankylosing spine is like a chalk piece. We might think that seeing X-ray, the fracture is involving only the anterior body and the posterior element is intact. So my advice is, whenever you are seeing an ankylosing spondylitis patient with trivial trauma, subject them to CT scan. Only CT scan will reveal the true nature of the fracture, sir. X-ray will not reveal.
So can we put it like this? So even if it is not painful, if it is a painless ankylosis, because there is it's a global instability kind of thing. So from posterior to anterior, it needs
100%, sir. 100%, sir. So any fracture, any small fracture in spine in ankylosing spondylitis, we should take it as an unstable fracture.
Okay.
What is the incidence of failure? I mean, literature-wise, failure of fixation, because you're putting a curved kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
Comparing to the normal.
Yes, sir. So normally there are some surgeons who try correcting this deformity during this fracture, using this fracture as an opportunity. But the chance of translation or cord injury is more, sir. So usually the patient is not coming for deformity surgery; they are coming for only pain. So I don't try to correct the deformity while doing this. So what I do is I harvest graft from iliac crest and all the spinous process I use as a bone graft. I usually fuse 2 segments above, 2 segments below, full of packed with bone graft. So I would have operated around some 10 cases of ankylosing spondylitis. I didn't have any failures in those things. Literature wise, there are, I don't know exactly, so I'm not sure. I will update you, sir.
Hello, sir. Prakasam sir has come into the line. Sir, welcome, Prakasam sir. How are you, sir?
Fine. Minanji, I want to ask one question to. எங்க என் போட்டோ வர மாட்டேங்குதா?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, president இருக்கார் சார். நம்ம டாக்டர் திருமலைச்சாமி இருக்கார் சார்.
Yeah. Vishnu, first of all, my congratulations for your work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You know that by doing ankylosing spondylitis, the first case which I did in GH.
Yes, sir.
Jayaraman did an osteotomy. The next day, patient died.
Okay, sir.
That was problematic. But most of the patients, the first, I think Manohar has asked that valid questions. Normally, these ankylosing spondylitis patients, even relatively younger, also will have osteoporotic bone.
Yes, sir.
So, the fixation failures in your experience, even though it's a short term.
Yes, sir.
Because we know that most of the time, the augmentation of the cement will be, as you said, it will be more valuable, but you cannot use cement for all the cases.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir.
what experience? How much you have come across?
Yes, sir. Actually, when I was doing my fellowship in Ganga Hospital, the teaching was when you are doing a short segment fixation, one level above, one level below, or two level above, two level below, in case of fractures in ankylosing spondylitis, the chance of failure is very, very high. So my idea is, whenever there is an ankylosing spondylitis, I always try to go minimum of 4 levels above or 3 levels above, 3 levels below. Whenever there is an opportunity, I do 4 level fixation above and 4 level fixation below. So the chance of failure in case if we are doing 4 levels above, 4 levels, it becomes very, very minimal, sir. My experience is, as I told earlier, I have done around 10 cases where there is no failure to the point, sir. Second thing is, I always add lot of bone grafts so that within a period of around 2 months, 3 months, it will fuse so that the chance of implant failure becomes less. Third, when the patient is when there is a significant osteoporosis, the hold is poor, I always start the patient on injection teriparatide. So I always ask the patient to take teriparatide injection for 1 year to 18 months. This substitute with the augmentation with teriparatide decreases the chance of implant failure in these kind of osteoporotic patients.
So other than ankylosing spondylitis, just osteoporosis.
Yes.
Yeah, any short column fixation will be more stable than the long column fixation is the normal principle.
Yes, sir.
But
yes, sir.
I understood, because this type of cases you have a short column fixation will not, according to you,
yes, sir,
be comparatively than a long fixation.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, Vishnu.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for joining, sir.
Thank you, Vishnu. Next, what is the presentation, Vishnu?
Sir, Gaur Sundaram sir was having some questions, sir.
No, the same thing. So when do you do short? I think osteoporosis you do 2, and ankylosing you do 4 above.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Kind of an algorithm.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm following, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, in your second case, you've gone up to D7 because there was a D6-7 fusion. You wanted to make use of the stability.
One is that reason. Second, in lumbar spine, I'm using 6.5 mm screws. So I thought that 3 levels below will be enough. In thoracic spine, I'm using 5.5 mm screws. So to make it doubly sure it's stable, I am going to 4 levels above in thoracic spine. That is the main reason for that.
Even in small females, you are happy with 6.5 for?
Yes, sir. So most of the time, the pedicle is it can hold 6.5 screws in adult patients, and most of the patients. Very rarely we see a dysplastic pedicle which is not holding 6.5 screws. Yes, sir. So if there is no other questions, we can move to the next presentation. The next presentation will be by Dr. Manimaran, sir. Sir, Dr. Manimaran, sir, are you ready, sir?
Mani.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Start, Mani.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So you can share your screen, sir. So Manimaran, sir, you can share your screen, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Mani, உங்க screen share பண்ணுங்க.
So I'm muting all participants.
Good evening, everyone. Can you see my screen, Vishnu?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's clear, sir.
Yeah, I have 2 cases, interesting cases. And I'll start with first one. Yeah, I have here the first case, a 45-year-old male patient with a history of severe pain in the right hip since 2 years. And he was unable to walk with support for the past 6 months. So he was wheelchair bound. And in the past history, he had a history of trauma 15 years ago. And following history of trauma, he received a native treatment. And the pain started 10 years ago in the hip. He had a trauma to the thigh. And later that, he had a pain. He developed pain in the hip joint. The patient is a known case of post-polio residual paralysis. That's in the opposite side. In the left side is the polio limb. On the right side, he has got all the pain. On examination, he has a fixed adduction deformity of 10 degrees, and his movements were completely restricted. And as I told you, its left lower limb is PPRP with the neurology at ankle, is 4 by 5, and hip and knee were like 1 by 5. And in the right limb, lower limb, he has a significant shortening of about 7 centimeters, and his spine is clinically normal. So this is the X-ray. Any comments? And you see that the normal hip is affected, whereas the polio limb is not affected. Very quite unusual, because why I am presenting this case is I have come across two cases exactly where the normal limb is affected with a dysplastic hip, whereas the affected polio limb is not affected, and there is a progressive arthritis in the normal hip. So when you come into the classification, so this is a CT scan of the affected side, where you can see there is a complete absence of anterior wall, and there is a deficient posterior wall also. And if you see the head is completely deformed, and it has migrated superiorly. So if you take the whole limb, so here, see here the most important thing is you can't comment on the pelvis X-ray. So you need always you need a long film X-ray of the entire limb. If you see here, there is the previous fracture which has which has malunited with a little bit of adduction. So always you have to go with the whole limb view. And so my plan was basically I have multiple problems here. So any suggestions from the audience, like what will be your plan? So how you are going to address this case? A young male with 10 years history of pain, and almost 6 months he's restricted homebound, and he's on wheelchair. He's unable to walk without support, and very painful. And a history of trauma with malunited femur fracture, and there is arthritis at the hip joint with a high riding hip and a dysplastic hip.
Mani.
Yeah.
இது polio limb வந்து left or right?
Polio limb is left, and the normal limb got affected.
Normal வந்து right side?
Right side.
Oh, side. Okay. So about the avascular necrosis with subluxation from the joint.
Yeah. There is some amount of DDH, like there is a dysplastic. Actually, it's a DDH hip.
Okay.
When I saw the literature, very few cases were reported DDH in a polio patient in the normal side, not in the affected side. And there is progressive arthritis also.
Yeah.
So here I have two problems. One is bringing down the hip, and he has been walking with the normal limb for the past almost 35 years. So probably the last 10 years the arthritis progressed after the history of the malunited fracture, after the history of trauma. So I have to bring the hip down. I have to very difficult to correct the deformity what he had following trauma, and no other go. I have to do a subtrochanteric osteotomy. I have to bring the hip center down. So I have two tasks here. So planning is most important. Here putting what kind of stem we can put in this kind of cases, because I have only little space. So how to go? What kind of stem I have to use?
I think we can start with our president Suvanam and Prakash sir. Everybody, we can start with everybody's comments.
Mani, could you show the CT, please?
Yeah. This is the CT.
And obviously, we cannot call this as a normal limb. It might have been either dysplasia or some amount of polio also would have affected that. Dysplastic.
Motor power is normal in the right lower limb.
Well, with this arthritis, it will be difficult to assess the motor power of the hip and malunited femur also. So basically, we have to take it as a dysplastic secondary OR. There is no neck at all. Okay, so how much you are able to bring it down, we have to assess. We'll do a very low neck resection and see how much you can bring it down. And there seems to be a fairly decent acetabulum. Yeah. Okay. we can accept some amount of high hip center, but we should be ready with the is it tall fellow, because what is the femur available for a stem insertion here?
Yeah, the femur available. Yeah, the femur available is around 200, less than 200 centimeter, maybe around 175.
Okay.
So I can't go for the long stem also. It's quite difficult because I can't breach the osteotomy site. Sorry, the malunited site.
That's right. Not even the site, maybe even wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I have to do a trochanteric shortening also here to bring the hip center down. Try to bring the hip center down, and exposing the acetabulum itself will be a problem here because of the tight soft tissue contraction.
Yeah, obviously you should be ready for a subtrochanteric shortening osteotomy. The implant choice was,
it's 8 o'clock.
If there is a sufficient length available to me, we can do with a regular echorail stem.
Yeah, a fully coated stem.
Yes, from short stem with the modularity available at the neck level. That's for the femur side. For the acetabular side, I think it doesn't look too bad. You're looking at this. Can you see my arrow? Yeah, there seems to be a good, fairly decent cavity. It may be a bit high hip center. Up to 2 centimeters, we can accept it. The anterior wall at the superior half is fairly available and dense. This is like a superior, and you see this is an anterior anterosuperior, and that's nice and sclerotic. So it's not a totally defective 4 type of DDH. Should be able to get away with a regular cup.
Cemented cup will be better. Cemented cup will be better. Right? Cemented cup will be better. We can ream it and we can put a cemented cup. I think that will be better. I think.
Cemented would be better, but in these sort of hips, when you go, you have to have a cemented as a backup available in case something goes wrong. Yes, as a bailout lesion.
So I have to bring my hip center down, and I have to plan for a modular stem here. I can't go for a routine echorail stem as Sir told, because the availability of the bone also is less here, and the length of the bone, the length of the prosthesis also matters here. I have little space here to work around, and this is the whole limb X-ray. So whole limb X-ray is always important in these kind of cases. We miss the deformity or we miss the fracture, malunited fracture, and when we go intraoperatively, we get into problems. So it's always better to do a whole limb X-ray and plan properly before going into contemplating these kind of surgery. One surgery we have to do this kind of patient already affected with poliomyelitis. I went for the modular stem. And this is an intro picture showing the subtrochanteric osteotomy. Only with subtrochanteric osteotomy, I was able to expose the acetabulum, and I released the iliopsoas tendon to have a good view. Before doing a subtrochanteric osteotomy, I reamed with the Eschrom reamer, and I went for a small size Eschrom stem because the length was very less. And I did a shelf grafting. I prepared the head and I removed all the cartilage after dislocating the head. And I went for a small size cup, 46 size cup with a 28 size head, and did a subtrochanteric osteotomy. And I did a modular stem, which is 9 millimeter in diameter and 130 centimeter in length. And I did on that, since the stem is a small stem, there is instability at the subtrochanteric site, so I added plating for the rotational stability. I did a plate, a locking compression plate, and this is the immediate post-op picture. I did a shelf grafting here, and I put a screw, and I got along with the 46 size cup and 28 size, and this is the smallest Eschrom available. I came here till here. Anything more than this, maybe more than 140. Stem length would have quite difficult to go away below the malunited fracture site. Any comment, please?
Mani, shelf you created for the acetabulum, right? Where did you take the graft?
Yeah, graft gives a good superior cover. Yeah, no, osteotomy. I took the head and put it as a supralateral support for the cup because it was defect. Like there was a defect. You can see in the CT also.
Is it to support the? Is it to support the cup or?
Yeah, support the cup.
Was it stable? Was the cup stable? Uncemented cup? Was it stable?
Yeah, it was a stable, uncemented. I used 2 screws here, and I did a oblique osteotomy. So this gave me a good opposition between the 2 fragments. I didn't do a transverse osteotomy. I did a oblique osteotomy, and because since there was already a 7 centimeter shortening, I did an oblique osteotomy and put a plate here. I put a long plate here. This is the immediate X-ray, and this is 2 years follow-up. You can see here a good amount of bone formation, and the osteotomy has united nicely. And see, you can see the hip center. I brought it down from here till here, and you can see the patient range of movement. And I had the post-op shortening of around 4 centimeter. And this is how the patient walks now. He walks with a typical polio gait, but he is painless. He doesn't have pain, and I put him on orthosis also, and he is not comfortable with the orthosis with the limb correction, the 4 centimeter correction. Any comment?
So was a subtrochanteric shortening osteotomy, sir? How much was it?
No, it was not a subtrochanteric shortening osteotomy. If you see here, you can say an oblique osteotomy. What I did here, just for the exposure of the acetabulum and to bring the to prepare the acetabulum, it will be more easier. And I didn't do much shortening. Probably 2 or 3 millimeter of bone would have gone. I didn't take the cylindrical bone we usually take in the trochanteric osteotomy, subtrochanteric osteotomy. I just did an oblique osteotomy.
This kind of cases typically call for the S-ROM to be always in the OR, because apart from the offset, the other thing which you're looking at is the version. S-ROM gives us the version because from the CT scans itself, we are able to see it's a coxa vara to start with, and usually it's a retroversion in the native hips, which will not allow us to use the regular fixed version stems.
Yeah. So that's the advantage with the modular stem always, particularly with the S-ROM stem. And the availability of a 9 mm stem is no other stem has got a smaller stem like here, because it's very narrow canal also.
Mani?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Sir,
actually, you have done a good job.
Thank you, sir.
You have done a good job.
Thank you, sir.
But now, suppose it is an institution.
Yeah.
See, normally what we do a lower femoral traction for a shortened period, 2 to 3 weeks, because private you cannot afford to keep a patient for traction for 3 weeks. So the adaptation of the soft tissue, is it good? When directly for exposing and bringing down so much, is it comfortable for the patient without developing any lymphatic edema like that?
Yes, sir. Here I think the traction doesn't play a role here in these kind of hips, where you have to do an extensive soft tissue release to bring the hip down. Traction doesn't have a role.
Okay. And the osteotomy also, I think it is little, is it a subtrochanteric or in the proximal third?
Yeah, almost in the, a little bit lower actually. We have to do below in the diaphyseal and metaphyseal junction. I did little bit down because of the obliquity of the osteotomy. It looks a little bit down.
Yeah. It is not subtrochanteric actually. It is actually the proximal third. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
And it's a good job. Thanks for the follow-up. What is the purpose of osteotomy here? If you're not doing a shortening, why did you do osteotomy? Was there a malunion to correct it to put your stem?
No, sir. Here I removed the bone, but less bone. I didn't remove much bone like where we remove almost 1 to 1.5 centimeter. We take a cylindrical bone out. The purpose here was to have a good exposure of the hip The subtrochanteric osteotomy really helped. It loosens the soft tissue so that hip will be exposed more easily, because it was very difficult to expose the hip before osteotomy. Then the second point here is I have to put a long stem, but there here it is not possible, and I have to bring the hip center down also. So I can't. Already he has got a 7 centimeter shortening. So I didn't do much shortening. I did probably 2.5 to 3 mm bone I have removed, if I remember.
Hello, Mani sir.
Yeah. Tell me, Kumar.
Sir, it's what approach, sir?
This is a posterolateral approach.
Okay, sir.
Can I go to the second similar case with the post-polio residual paralysis? I just showed a X-ray because I came across in another patient. This is a 2 years follow-up. Okay. See, this is another patient, a 60-year-old female, post-polio residual paralysis. You see here, she had a fractured neck of femur, where I put her on a percutaneous screw fixation 2 years ago. And she had, when I took an X-ray before, I told her, you may require surgery after once you develop the pain. She came after 2 years, like once the fracture united, and she developed pain. Then I operated her. Here I did a basic, the primary prosthesis. I didn't go for any modularity. I just brought the hip center down, and it came well. Post-operative, this is post-op follow-up of almost 3 years now. Why I put this X-ray was I just searched the literature. One Taiwan literature I saw was like they're seeing a lot of cases where the acetabular dysplasia can be severe in non-paralytic leg because of the coxa valga or leg-leg discrepancy and the pelvic tilt. They're doing a lot of periacetabular osteotomy in this study, and the Mayo Clinic also in the registry they showed they have done THR in a non-polio limb in more than 5 cases. So I just Googled it, and I saw, I was like, this kind of presentation was very rare. I came across 2 cases. I just want to share these 2 cases with our Midwest members. Anyway, this is my first case. I'll go with a small presentation, the second case. This is once again the lockdown case, typical lockdown case. It's an occupational injury of this patient. So this patient had the history. He was working at home, which is not used to. He took that wood cutting machine, the saw, the wood cutter machine. It fell down on his leg, and the saw cut his tibia as well as the fibula. There was a nail inside the tibia which prevented him getting amputated. So he was so lucky. The saw didn't go beneath the nail. So he presented with a deformity and an open wound. On this patient past history is he underwent surgery, Enders nail fixation of the distal third tibia almost 15 years ago. After 3 years, he underwent implant removal. There only one nail was able to be removed, and second nail they were unable to remove. So they left him the same hospital. We operated almost 15 years ago. It was operated by my senior surgeon. So he came back with this. He was so lucky that probably the nail prevented the amputation. So summons from the members. So what will be the further plan? How to approach this patient? This is another lockdown case where a non-occupation. His occupation is not carpenter once again. So he was doing some household work, and accidental injury. Really a limb threatening injury. Entire anterior muscle compartment, the tibialis anterior was fully cut. So what will be your management? Meenakshi sir.
Yeah, it's very. If the rod is not there, I think you would have lost the limb.
Yes, very lucky fellow.
Yeah, you should remove the implant, Mani. Plan for refixation. That's a option.
So this is almost 15 years old. I think implant removal may be quite difficult. That's what I think, because last time only they were unable to remove the implant after 3 years after surgery. Only one nail was removed.
Now it was open, sir. Can you remove through the fracture site, sir?
No, very difficult. No, the implant is intact, is already intact, incorporated into the bone. So you want to cut it, cutting the implant will be a problem here.
No.
Then you can introduce another Enders nail, sir.
Yeah. So what I initially thought was, say, I wanted to remove the implant or just correct the deformity with the implant inside and just exposed, like I exposed and I saw only the tibialis anterior entire muscle was cut, and the neurovascular bundle was intact, and the lateral muscles, everything was intact. So I thought I'll put an external fixator and come. Then I decided, okay, let's correct the deformity and see, and put one more nail correcting the deformity. So I put one more nail and corrected the deformity, and I repaired the tibialis anterior muscle, and then I put him on POP. This was the best I can do in a short time. An unream nail, so debrided and put an unream nail, and corrected the deformity, and wait for the soft tissue to heal and the bone to unite. Thank you. This is my second case.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Any comments and questions, sir?
Mani, if you want to remove the nail, how will you remove it?
President, we'll have one option. Can we do at the entry point of the nail or on at the tibial condyle? Can we make a burr hole to the size of the nail head and try to knock it out? Is it possible, making a big burr hole?
Yeah, I would. If I want to do it, I would
diamond burr.
Redox Rex instrument to cut the nail.
Yes.
And I will attempt to remove it. I mean, whatever Mani has done is definitely the alignment is back. That's good. But somebody says that I want the implant to be out, I will try to remove it by that means.
Yeah, we can try it out.
Yeah.
Mani, did you try it on the table? Mani?
I think he is not in the line, sir.
Okay, fine. We'll go to the next case, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, that comes to the end of our presentation. Sir, you want me to show you have sent me some pictures. You want me to show that,
No,
sir?
I think the time is up. I think we can ask some president to give us some few words regarding how to proceed with the present scenario with COVID-19 cases to do the procedures, and some tips and tricks from his side, what he has discussed with various doctors around India. They had a lot of discussions. So what is the final conclusion and how to proceed? We can do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here it is, new information regarding COVID, what to do. But overall, we see that many of us are willing to start our work back. And the fear overall, even though the number of cases are coming up, luckily the death rate is low, or at least by statistically it's low. The fear is gone to the extent it was there before. Number one. Number two, it is highly contagious but not lethal. And precautions wise, perfect PPE and management kind of medical people who see the patients can do. But as a surgeon, using the complete PPE and doing a major long surgery like a scoliosis surgery or revision surgery or a difficult polytrauma, it looks difficult. So I think if possible, you can do a COVID test, but if somebody asks what if the patient is in the incubation period and COVID test again is only 60 to 70% sensitive. These are all unanswered questions. The best protection is proper N95 mask, wash your body and everything after surgery. Unlike previously, we used to do 5-6 cases a day. We change the theater, change everything. If you are suspicious or if you are not sure, then just give added protection to us. To the us means to the whole operating team. So that's the way to go forward. Maybe for next 2-3 months and see how things are going. and we can all share our experience about how many elective cases and how many emergencies we do, and what kind of protection we use, and what's the outcome. Suppose I've done some 500 cases with this kind of protection, only N95 mask, regular gowns, and limited people and all, no infection, in spite of the zone being orange or red, then we can just keep going. But if we find, suppose you've done some 100 cases, 500 cases, and you have seen cases and some of the members or unfortunately ourselves got infected, then we have to definitely relook what we are doing. So at the moment, we have PPE kit, but we are not using it. We do COVID test in elective cases, not for emergency. And definitely theater, we after every case, we are not completely disinfecting, because we don't feel, out of these 146 cases, no COVID test was positive. And we have done more than 1,000 emergency surgeries during the COVID period. And all 1,000 patients, more than the 1,000 patients, none of them became sick or became COVID clinically, COVID positive in the hospital. So this shows that kind of we can just keep going with a little extra care to protect us.
Sir?
What is the take on laminar airflow?
Laminar, yeah, laminar airflow can be continued. That's what the consensus group by Parvezi has, under his team, has given. You can continue laminar airflow. You don't need to go for negative section theater. That's a consensus.
But the outlet absorption floor outlet has to be shut in a positive pressure. That was the original message we were getting. The laminar, in all the four corners, we'll have the outlet to suck the air to recirculate it.
Yeah.
That can be sealed. That was one of the idea was given, and keep one of the smaller doors open of the theater, so that to reduce the viral load inside the theater. That was one of the messages we were getting earlier. Or is it a reliable information?
Have you read this paper recently? The recent published one by the Parvezi in JVGS on print. I think May, the month of May. No.
Okay, no.
I can share it to the group. Okay, in that paper, 77 experts, including orthopedic surgeons, anesthesists, all kind of doctors involved in COVID care, has been questioned, put forward all the questions, and they are given answers. Based on their credibility, it was taken as valuable or not valuable and recommendations. In that, they say that if the hospital policy is to have the positive pressure ventilation, you just keep going. So you don't need to convert into negative pressure ventilation.
So regarding the laminar flows, the recommendation as of now is to increase the number of cycles to 25 air exchanges per hour. But I don't know how cost effective it is going to be. So as of now, what Sugunam sir told only we are doing, we are using a laminar or non-laminar, keeping the door open to let the air keep going out. We use the PPE.
HEPA filter also.
So regarding consent, what type of consent do you take?
Yeah, we have designed based on recommendations from various associations like Indian Orthopedic Association, IMA, and also some other friends from UK, where it's these consent forms are there. We got it. Basically, you have to get the consent form from the patient as well as from the attendant, that they have not gone to the foreign travel, so they not come in contact with any COVID positive person, and they know that it's a criminal offense. They hide the fact that there is a chance they got infection. All these things like fever, all these lung infection, symptoms, everything is recorded. And And also, we tell them that there's a chance that you might contract a COVID infection during the hospitalization. It is maybe that you are in incubation period, or you might come across the infection during the hospital, and the hospital or doctor is not responsible. And we also discussed with our hospital medical legal lawyers. They said in this pandemic, this suing of a patient that he contracted the disease during surgery will not be valid. We don't need to worry about it. So some of the patients asked, what if I contract the disease from you? Yes, there's a chance. You can contract from me. That's what. But the insurance company will not pay for any COVID-related. That's what they say. But some of the insurance companies, I heard that Troy has recommended to cover the COVID patients and their complications. You can check with your own insurance companies.
Is there any way of testing COVID-19 in Salem?
No.
Coming up,
yeah, you should
Hospital is trying to get it approved from ICMR. They're waiting for approval for the PCR, RT-PCR test.
Yeah. If the hospital has the kit, the equipment, then it's quite easy.
They have the equipment. They were doing RT-PCR, H1N1.
Just the approval, that's all.
Yeah, they need approval. It's getting delayed. That's what they said when we contacted.
Plus the health secretary and chief minister is your hometown. You can talk to him.
Sugunam, you can send it to Ehrlich Newbeck Lab, Chennai only. They are collecting it.
No.
But one thing is, it will take 2 days time. If you send it by courier, the next day they have a batch, it seems. In that batch, morning and evening, 2 batches they put. And if at all we are within that batch, they will do in the first batch, or it will be in the second batch. And in the mail, they will send you the report.
Meenakshi, are you sure you can just like that send it to Ehrlich?
There is a form to be filled, because that form will be submitted to the government also. Even an Ehrlich Newbeck Lab will give a report that from Salem, this hospital has sent a patient with symptoms or without symptoms. The report will go, and even whether it is positive or negative, that report also will go. So you can send with some clinical findings. You add it and you can send it to the private.
Because this thing we took it up in IMA. First, we spoke to collector.
Okay.
What collector said, that is maybe I think last week. So what he said is, we are willing to give the approval and all that, provided we have the facility and applied. And we heard that Gokulam is already on the process of getting all that. So when we inquired with the micro lab, he said they have given a district like Erode and I think Coimbatore and 3 districts. Only from those districts they are getting it. Just like that, we cannot, from Salem, we cannot send it unless government approves that. Yesterday's health secretary's note, what they said, we will give within few days. Basically, you have to get that. You have to have the facilities, and you have to have the ICMR and the NABL accreditation. I think Gokulam is moving, to my knowledge. So
Gokulam is already having a PCR machine. They have a basic apparatus. Only thing they should get the kit and things. For that, it will cost about 15 lakhs. That's all.
So that's
the investment for PCR is 50 lakhs.
So I'm not sure whether we can just like that send anywhere. So unless
Mohan, from Salem you can't send it to Coimbatore. From Salem, they are collecting it in Chennai, and I'm doing it. We are sending it.
Oh, you have said it. Okay.
Yeah. We are sending it, and we are getting the report.
Okay.
And GH also they will collect. Provided GH, you should mention, say the patient is having sore throat. The word sore throat is very important, and the word cough is important. Main thing, sore throat they tell. Even if you tell running nose, they tell no, don't send.
So what's up?
Excuse me. It's not for COVID suspected. We are talking about elective surgeries.
Elective surgery, Sugavanam, you can send it to Ehrlich Neubeck Lab, Chennai.
But do you mention sore throat then that?
No. We can send it like that. We are having a history. They are having a previous history like that, so you can mention it. But don't mention a sore throat and all. It's not necessary for a private lab.
So how long will it take if you send it to Chennai?
Sir, for us today evening they'll take the courier, sir. Tomorrow afternoon they are getting the specimen, and evening batch, if the slot is empty, they will put it, sir. Otherwise, the next day morning they will put, and by mail they'll send the report. So maximum 36 hours to 48 hours.
TMS, sir, apart from your hospital, anybody else that's the PCR test? PSG and
PSG, they have got their own PCR. Sir, KMCH has got PCR, sir?
Yes.
Sir, whether they accept a sample from outside hospital for doing PCR test?
I think so. You can register. I will let you know tomorrow. I think so. Yes.
Instead of sending all the way to Chennai, Coimbatore will be very near.
Maximum capacity is 100 tests per day.
Okay.
Money.
100.
Money.
Yeah.
கோயம்புத்தூர்ல அனுப்பிச்சு எடுக்கிறது கேட்டா கோயம்புத்தூர்ல எடுக்க மாட்டேங்கிறாங்க. தெரியல என்னன்னு.
The rule is it has to go through the JD.
Joint director.
சென்னை தான் எடுக்கிறாங்க. கோயம்புத்தூர் எடுக்க மாட்டாங்க. நீங்க அனுப்பிச்சீங்கன்னா எடுக்க மாட்டாங்க.
I think our president has to influence KMCH.
அப்புறம் ஜேடி அவங்க ஆபீஸ்ல இருந்து வந்திருக்கு.
Money because you just need to register. That's all. I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
KMCH நாங்க அனுப்பலாமா சார் சாம்பிள் அது வந்து கேட்டு சொல்லுங்க.
இல்ல அதான் கேட்டு சொல்றேன்றாரு.
I'll give information tomorrow.
Okay sir, thank you sir. You can send it by message WhatsApp sir, I can pass it on sir.
Sir, I want to add one thing more, sir. In SKS Hospital, the BioLine lab, which is we are outsourced to BioLine lab, they have got approval, ICMR approval for testing COVID-19. So from our hospital, we went to meet Dr. JD and Dr. DD to get approval whether we can collect samples. They said strictly no. So if at all anything comes positive, we will close the hospital and quarantine the doctors. That was there for us.
That's the whole story.
Yes, sir. Yes, yesterday we got a message that it will not be closed.
Yeah.
Yes, hospital won't be closed.
Yes, sir.
It is a positive message. Hospital won't be closed. Doctor's name won't come out. So
Yes,
don't
sir.
worry. And they have added one more thing. They have told don't send elective cases to check for COVID-19. That also they have sent. And don't send samples to GH unnecessarily. And don't make the patient wait for elective cases to get a positive report and operate. You take precautions and operate. These are the things they have got from the government side.
Yes,
so everywhere, I think they are in a mind that we live with corona and keep going with corona and get immunized once we get. That's all.
Yes,
get back to work.
What about the antibody test? Today I met one of the reps from Ozone Biomedics from Faridabad. Who are they? Like they are manufacturing a lot of testing kits for even RT-PCR kits as well as the antibody test kits for COVID-19. What they said, the company people spoke here was you have to get approval from ICMR at least. No need for NABL. You have to get an approval that you can do the card test. They said the card costs around 555 rupees. So any other lab who has ICMR approval here, I think we can do the card test at least. You can see whether it is positive for antibody. What is your opinion, sir? They said initially that the Chinese kits were false, but not the Indian kits. This is totally manufactured in India. Any opinion regarding that? But what about the
sensitivity, specificity, all that is.
Yeah, he has mentioned more than 90%. That's what the company fellow spoke to me from Faridabad.
So even the antibody kits, they need to be certified by the ICMR.
Yes,
and
it's ICMR approved. Yeah, it's an ICMR approved. It's in the website. Even we have to. Even people who are planning to procure the antibody test kit, we have to be approved. Like first of all, we need ICMR approval to do a card test. So even that message they told me today.
I think he's jumping sentences, I believe, because card test is just a serum antibody test. It's just like the HIV card test.
Yeah, that's what I told him.
ICMR.
Yeah,
Probably
that's what I told him.
ICMR.
Yeah, no, it's ICMR approved because they're one of the known company which was approved in the ICMR website. I went and saw it is approved.
Yeah, which means again you have to confirm with the antigen, isn't it?
Yeah. See, antibody. If there is an antibody, then we can be more careful, isn't it? Like we can say that he's already.
Recently, what they've done is they've done the gene expert machine to screen for the envelope genes in the GH, and then if it is possible, then they do the PCR. So that's from the GH side. But again, as Sir is telling, if we cannot send it to the GH, then what do we do?
Yeah,
we have a serious problem in Salem. It's not possible to do electric.
Probably we have to go across the border and operate.
Okay, I think Vishnu, we can end the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Out of thanks.
Yes, sir. So I would like to thank first of all our TNOA president, Dr. Thirumale Swami sir, for joining us. Thank you very much, sir, for allotting your time and joining us. And I thank every member to join the Zoom meeting. I think this is the way we are going to meet for the next 2 or 3 months. So it's quite informative meeting, quite interactive meeting. It was a lot of interactions happening rather than in the personal meeting. It was more interaction happening in Zoom meeting.
Distraction.
Yes, sir.
Less distraction.
Sir, do we get coupons from the next meeting?
Yeah, we have to ask our president, Dr. Meenakshi sir.
Now we can go to the
all these meetings. The final meeting will have a super fellowship meeting.
Yes, sir.
Probably a night stay also.
Compensation.
Yeah.
100%. DMS sir, what about our TNOA in this year, like 2021? Will it be a normal affair or what will be?
I think next February it should be all right. We hope so.
So our mid-year CME, is it cancelled or?
No.
Postponed to?
September.
Okay, sir.
Instead of July.
That is after this this one Professor TKS
Mid-year CME.
That's mid-year CME, yeah.
That's what September.
September, yeah, we'll see in that meeting. If it is okay, then probably we'll have our medical, legal and another one.
KMS, one suggestion.
Yes, sure.
In September, we may have a limitation for 50 or 100 candidates. In that case, we can have a multi-center conferences.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yes.
And that's the plan. You can have a 50 at Salem, 50 at Trichy, and 50 at like that.
That's our plan.
That's how it's going to be.
Yeah, within a week, we are going to have a small meeting, Zoom meeting, and we'll let you know the plan to the zonal clubs. So the zonal clubs have to organize small group meetings. Then from Tirunelveli, live surgery and 100-member participation will be web telecast.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the information, sir. And one more advantage of this Zoom meeting is it's very economical too.
Yes, sit at home and listen, and very specific we are, and everybody are asking doubts. I think it is very good compared to sitting in a hotel, enjoying and having a fellowship. Most of the concentration goes on in dinner only.
Yes, sir.
You can't carry on like this for life.
Yeah, that's right. Correct.
Correct. A month at least.
We need to have a relaxation, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is antisocial.
Point to depression base.
Yeah, we could see a beard.
Sir, this is COVID-19 beard.
Dr. Frank is in full suit now.
He's in suit.
Yeah.
I tried cutting my hair and it went wrong. That is
Hey,
why
Frank.
Oh,
Hey,
really?
Frank. What is this, Frank?
Mr. T Mari I Mochi. I am Modi.
ஏங்க எங்கள்கிட்ட பேசுறதுக்கு எதுக்குங்க மாஸ்க் N95 மாஸ்க் ஓவரா இருக்கு. மாஸ்க் எடுங்க, மூஞ்ச காமிங்க. யாரு கட் பண்ணது? யாரு கட் பண்ணா?
மேடம் பழி வாங்கிட்டாங்கன்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
ரொம்ப ஜாஸ்தியா இருக்கு.
My daughter did it for me, pa.
உனது காமிப்பா.
Yeah. Even
காமிப்பா. பிரேம் உனக்கு முடியே இல்ல பிரேம், இதுதான் உனக்கு முடி இல்லன்னு சொல்றேன். முடி இருந்தாதான் பிரேம்.
she trimmed my beard and cut my hair.
Beard trim பண்ணி நல்லா இருக்காது. Okay, good. Yeah, you can use it. Philip இது razor. Yeah. Battery of chargeable trimmer.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
You can see me.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining, sir. Thanks a lot. Good night, sir.
Mani, Vishnu,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
and all
Thank you, sir.
other members. Thank you for the
Thank you,
participation.
sir. Thank you, sir. Bye, sir. Bye, sir.
Good night. Good night.